Hey, y'all.
Hey!
My name is Drew Tessier of the Alabama Tessiers.
Yeah!
So, okay, picture it. It's 1999, Alabama, turn of the century. I'm a freshman at Auburn University, and my mom and her friend have come to visit me at school. Now, we're sitting across from each other at dinner at Auburn's finest dining establishment, the Red Lobster. And I look down and check the time on my Palm Pilot, and my mom says, "Honey, don't be late for rehearsal. He's just been cast as Nathan Detroit in Guys and Dolls," and she's just beaming with pride.
Welcome to Closet Cases, the show where LGBTQ comedians tell their coming out and transitioning stories live on stage and later go deeper into a podcast. Today we have Drew Tessier. You know him as the producer and creator of the Yas Comedy Fest, and he and his husband Peter are powerhouses in the gay community, comedy community here in New York. So welcome, Drew.
Hey, y'all, how you doing?
Good. So I'm so excited you're doing this.
Me
This
too.
is so great. Your set at Stonewall was hilarious. So fucking funny.
It was a blast. It was a really, really fun show. I was a little nervous about it. In fact, when you first reached out to me to do it, I think I was supposed to do one before during Christmas, Christmas. That's how you know I'm from the South, because I described the month of December as Christmas. But no, you'd reached out to me, and I think it was during December, and we were in the middle of Yas. Plus, I work, in corporate retail, and just I was so intimidated about the idea of doing this coming out kind of thing, because I was nervous that I didn't have this sort of, I don't know, I guess in my mind I was thinking you wanted more of a dramatic story, which I didn't think I had. But when I really sat down and started putting the pieces together, I sort of revisited ideas that I hadn't thought about in a long time. So I had a good time putting it together.
Yeah, I thought it was just really concise. It was very cohesive and hilarious, of course. That was the most important part altogether. A Southern boy telling his coming out story on stage
Lordy.
at the legendary Stonewall Jackson. No, just kidding. So it was awesome. I loved it. And we're just going to take a little listen to a little bit more of your story.
Right.
And her friend looks at me and she's like, "Oh, that's so cool. I love theater. When did you first know that you wanted to be an actor?" And, I'm trying to clear the Cheddar Bay biscuit out of my throat. And Mom answers for me again and says, "Oh, we always knew that Andrew was going to be an actor. When he was a little boy, he used to walk up and down the street with an umbrella and a suitcase singing just a spoonful of sugar." He was absolutely channeling Julie Andrews and Mary Poppins. That's how my mom knew that I was going to be an actor. So close. Again, all the pieces just right there. When I was trying to figure out how I wanted to tell this story, I went through a few different anecdotes in my mind, but that one I felt like really tied the room together. I don't have a super dramatic coming out story. What I have is a decade-long game of chicken with my mother, where I would drop hints and she would pretend to ignore them. She would make thinly veiled accusations. I would ignore them. It was very healthy. It was like the passive-aggressive Olympics.
One of my favorite lines in Closet Cases ever is the decade-long game of chicken with your mother.
Yeah.
That is so crazy. It just sounds like she was so in denial. Is that just sort of this Anglo-Saxon thing
I don't
you guys
know.
did?
For starters, and I do sort of paint this picture of my family being very Southern, which in fact they're not. I spent most of my life in the South, so I sort of identify very much with Alabama, but they are very Catholic, and just kind of and military. So just kind of very personally conservative. They're not super judgmental. I don't really ever I never heard outwardly homophobic, things, but it was and I can't remember if I say this in the podcast or not, but I find that people in the South are less homophobic and more kind of homo disbelieving.
Yes, you did say that.
Right,
That's so good.
And so I never knew anybody gay. I mean, we didn't have gay friends. We didn't have looking back, I think the owner of the this is known, so am I outing anybody? I think the owner of the movie theater and the owner of the beauty salon in my hometown, I believe, were an item. And again,
not the owner of the beauty salon.
Absolutely,
No.
I know, it's just groundbreaking.
Shocker.
But it does kind of go back to prove sort of the weird hypocrisy down there, which is, I think, which happens to any of us, including my parents. You think you think you can't accept something until you're faced with somebody that and I think that's kind of why it was so important for people to come out, is making people realize that they are in fact friends with queer people, and like I said, everybody knew Clark Cinemas and David's Hair Salon, and it was somehow in a weird way kind of okay with it. But I think it also speaks to the South, and sort of the painful journey into integration as well as, it's one or two fine, but we just don't want a town full, this sort of slow acceptance and then 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But, as far as my mother went, I think she pretended. I think that it was so much more a knowing, which is in a lot of ways even more painful, but kind of a knowing, pretending like she didn't know, rather than just a true, which I guess could still be denial. I don't know.
Wow. And your parents, you said, it didn't grow up in the South, but you did. Where did they come from?
Well, both my parents were actually from military families as well, but they met in California. I mean, to sort of set the stage for who my parents are as human beings, my parents went to college in California in the 1960s and have never smoked marijuana. I mean, that is like... They are rigid with their sort of personal beliefs, but that also kind of, I mean, they're also tremendous parents, and definitely kind of being parents was their main focus my entire life. They're good people. How
many siblings do you have?
Just one, and we're 8 years apart. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you're an only child.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Older or younger?
He's older and also military.
Oh, wow. So you're the only non-military person in the family.
The pink sheep, for sure.
Do you feel, growing up being a young actor, that you were different from everyone else in a big way?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was always the weird kid. I made it work fine for me. I mean, high school was fine for me. I'm not looking to go back, but, I survived fine and was involved with the things that I was involved with. But yeah, always the weird kid.
Did your parents come to see your shows?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, did your brother?
Again, kind of with the age. I mean, he was in Afghanistan a lot, during the time when I was in college.
Thomas said thank you for his service.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, my parents, every single one, and it's so funny. My parents have seen me in Chekhov's Three Sisters. My parents have seen
Which
me
sister did you play?
All 3 of them. It was a one-woman show with sock puppets. No, they came to every single show, and I think to this day, of all of the serious theater I've done, my dad probably will tell you that the favorite thing he's ever seen me in was Schroeder and You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown.
Aw, that's so sweet. I'm glad they're really supportive.
They were very, very supportive. I always felt like, because, my dad's a military guy, and discipline was big, and follow through was big in my family. Even if it was a sport that I hated, I had to make it to the end of the season. I never had to play again after that, but, like very, very much through. So they were always fine with me being artsy-fartsy and creative, just kind of as long as I was better at it than everybody else. I mean, sort of that's where that military kind of, I don't know, pageant mom thing came in, I guess.
So you can do it as long as you're a star.
Absolutely. Exactly.
On the marquee, Drew Tessier.
And my dad wasn't opposed to the passive-aggressive Olympics either. I mean, also that same year, he called me. My dad was kind of an intimidating dude. He was a colonel in the military. So yeah, we were Southern and military and Catholic. It was like the Trump trifecta. It was amazing. So Colonel Tessier calls me on this Saturday morning, and it's early, and I'm sitting there in the kitchen with my college roommate and lifelong best friend Katie, And I answer the phone. I'm like, hey, Dad, what's up? And he's like, well, I've got to go down to the Walmart and pick up an uninstaller program. I'm like, what's an uninstaller program? He's like, well, funny you should ask. Apparently, everything you look at on the internet stays on your hard drive until you put in an uninstaller program. And I'm like, huh. Okay, bye-bye, talk to you later. And I must have been white as a ghost because Katie's like, what's up, what's going on, who died? And I was like, well, I think I just came out to my dad. And she's like, okay, are you coming out to me right now? And I'm like, yeah, I think I am. And she's like, okay, cool. You want to smoke a joint? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. Now, to this day, I'm sure that my parents think that I was corrupted by the leftist college education system of Auburn, Alabama. Bastion of liberal thought that it is. But I had always known. I mean, always known. And I always say that, in Alabama, especially back then, they're not homophobic. They're homo-disbelievic. I mean, gays just don't exist. It's like religious diversity and abortion clinics. I mean, we just don't have it in Alabama.
As we discussed earlier, your parents grew up religious. Did you grow up religious yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I wanted to be a priest up until probably 8th or 9th grade.
Wow.
I think. And definitely looking back, there was sort of, because I went from wanting to be a priest to dating really Christian girls, which is easy in the South. Because, again, it's that avoidance of sex entirely. Like, oh, well, that'll just, knock that off the list. And I won't have to worry about it. But, yeah, I mean, I talk about it in my act, every holy day of obligation, every Sunday, Good Friday, Easter Sunday, Taco Tuesday, the whole thing. I mean, we were super, super, super Catholic.
Also, I think Catholicism isn't the biggest religion in the South either, which is kind of odd to be a Catholic in the South.
It is very odd because all my friends were Baptists. And so even being in a very, very Christian family, we were still kind of outsiders in a way, plus not being from there. I mean, most everybody I went to high school with were 15 generations deep in this little town. And now that I'm getting to the age where my friends have kids in high school and I'm watching it unfold on Facebook, and I'm like, oh, well, this is all making so much more sense. I mean, like, your parents knew each other from the time they were born. I mean, no wonder I was always this kind of outsider in this Enterprise, Alabama is a bizarre little place.
How many people are in that town?
I don't know. I graduated with, I want to say 425 somewhere.
Oh, that's actually a decent sized school.
It's not tiny. Now, but the high school situation, the whole schooling situation is interesting down there. We didn't integrate until the 1970s.
Oh, wow.
In fact, I still had teachers, because they integrated teachers first. So they sent 4 white teachers to the black high school and 4 black teachers to the white high school, and then went with, started with the students. And they've done everything in the world they can try to figure out to make it work best. But when I was going through school, there were 6 different elementary schools. And no matter how they've tried to rebus, redistrict, it always ends up the same thing, kind of the hierarchy of money in town. And then we all get thrown into the same grade or the same school for 7th grade, which used to be the black high school, Coppinville Junior High School. And it is a year of absolute hell because I can isolate so many memories to that year because it's just 7th grade. Right. And especially for me, being a skinny, young, gay kid, when you look at, I guess I was 11 or 12, 12-year-old boys, there's a big cross-section of what that looks like, size and everything. And I was, a scrawny, tiny, scared little white boy in this crazy school. Then they divide us up again for 2 junior highs, and then we all go to the same high school together. My dad, after he retired from the military, became a teacher at Coppinville, that same school that's all 7th grade. He created this program that replaced SHOP called Exploring Technology. But his principal, Zerubbabel Isaac Fleming, can trace I'm good friends with his niece, actually. He can trace his family, although they still owned the land that was given to them by the government during homesteading.
Oh, wow.
And he was one of the first black teachers to teach math at the white high school, and then he became the principal. So he was my dad's boss at Coppinville Junior High School.
And was there a lot of diversity where you grew up?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what's so interesting. You know, it's so easy to take pot shots at the South as far as race relations go. And my God, it's a mess. But, you know, I went to a true 50-50 high school. So while there are problems and still a lot of growth that needs to happen, I feel like it is happening a lot more organically than, I mean, I feel like the Manhattan School District's the most segregated school district in the country. It's just done socioeconomically rather than, you know, by race.
Right.
But, yeah, there's actually, the guy I was just talking about, his granddaughter, or his niece, a very good friend of mine, I was interviewing her recently for something I'm working on, and she had this very interesting quote, because she's very popular in high school. She was head cheerleader, very, very cool person, and I was kind of asking her what was it like, and she said, you know, I tell people all the time, Alabama is full of the nicest bigots you could ever want to meet. It is complicated down there.
I never felt like I tried to hide, you know, my pink flags either. I was high profile in high school. You know, I was in show choir and cheerleading, and I was an Eagle Scout and an altar boy. It's like my parents were trying to catch a predator. Dressing me up in costumes as bait. So, a little while after Lobster Fest and the, you know, great internet porn incident of 1999, I started telling people at school. And I came out at 19, and that was young back then. I mean, I know you kids come out at birth now, but, you know, that was young. And I was the only gay dude. I was the only gay dude in a theater department. And I kind of had to come out because people were finding out because I'd broken up with my girlfriend who was also in Guys and Dolls. She was a hot box dancer. And I broke up with her on the way to dress rehearsal in a Valentine's Day card. Now, okay, so there's a little drama associated with my coming out story. Stay with me here. Now, I did really like this girl. And I sat down and I did this really ornate, handcrafted Valentine. I was going through a decoupage phase at the time, you know, just typical heteronormative shit. And I made this really elaborate Valentine, and I sat down to write her a note, you know, something like, roses are red, violets are blue, side note, I'm gay. And I just felt like I had to tell her the truth. And so I went in and I folded up this Trojan horse of a Valentine's Day card, and I set it on her pillow for her to find after rehearsal. And wouldn't you know it, she had to go back in her room for one more thing, and she comes out and she's carrying this, you know, collage of fucked up missed messages, and she's like, her eyes are sparkling. She's like, is this for me? I'm like, yeah. She's like, can I open it? And I was like, I wish you wouldn't. And she did. And she reads it, and she takes a beat, and she looks up at me, and she said, get in the car. And as we're riding to rehearsal, Bonnie Raitt's I Can't Make You Love Me If You Don't is just blaring. And I can't make your heart feel something that it won't. Just craziness. It took a minute. We did pull through as friends. She's married now. She's got 4 kids. And every Valentine's Day, we speak on the phone, or at least text. Actually, 1999 was our 20-year anniversary this past Valentine's Day. Aww. Hopefully she sings the same thing now, too.
Wow, I cannot believe you broke up with your girlfriend with a Valentine. But I love that you guys are still friends.
Yeah, like I said, it took a minute. But we do, in fact, you know, to be honest, this past Valentine's Day, I guess I posted something on Instagram that was a picture of Peter and I that said something about Happy Valentine's Day. And then Emily, I guess I've unmasked her. Emily replied, technically this is our anniversary. And that is actually what sort of got the pieces into motion, because I was going in one direction with this that I kind of decided. And one of the first drafts, I sort of said something about, which I broke up with her in a Valentine's Day card and moved on. And then coming back in a later draft, I was like, I should probably spend a little bit more time on that, because that was a whole thing.
Wow. And then you weren't out to yourself at that point, were you? Or were you sort of coming to terms with your own sexuality?
I mean, I always viewed being gay as this sort of hobby or something that would eventually go away. Once I met the right girl, like this was something. But I mean, as far back as junior, I was in Boy Scouts, so I mean,
so you made your way around.
Right. I reacted on most impulses that I had growing up. So, and then, the time period between my freshman year of college, I did 1 year at a little school called Troy State University. Mm-hmm. I was the mascot, T-Roy the Trojan.
Wow.
So I did 1 year as a Trojan and then transferred to Auburn University. So I told my best friend Katie that my freshman year that I was gay. And she was really cool about it. I mean, because it was just like, okay, cool. But I wasn't really quite ready to live it. Yeah, it was just kind of like, this is known and we know about it and we'll get to it when we get to it. But it didn't really change anything. And then when I went to Auburn, even being in a theater department, I don't know why, I sort of went back in, and then there was this weird kind of dating situation with Emily, which, I mean, the writing was on the wall from the beginning. And this got dropped actually when I did and on paper, the relationship made sense. I mean, she loved Dolly Parton. I loved Dolly Parton. She loved designer shoes. I loved designer. I mean, it kind of all made sense in my mind.
You both love dick.
Yeah.
So many things in common.
So many things. I love you, Emily.
How long did you date girls after Emily?
That was it.
Oh,
honestly, again, shitting where I eat anyway. I mean, because we're both theater majors in a small. So that is all true. It was on the way to rehearsal. She's livid with me, and then we go into the separate dressing room. She's in with all the girls, and she can't, to her credit, tell anybody what she's upset about.
Right.
And I couldn't really tell anybody what I was upset about. And although, again, it's so embarrassing to think back on it because everybody knew. But I don't know. It was a different time.
Yeah. And then at that time, were you still religious and were still waiting for marriage in terms of heterosexual sex and all that sort of thing?
Well, yeah. So as far as heterosexual sex goes, of course, yeah. Waiting for sometime, not now. Whatever it is, church, God, yeah, we'll go with that one. No, I think I had started having my REM moment by that point. I'd started losing my religion by the time I was at Auburn, or at least starting to question shit. But, Catholicism's a funny thing. I mean, you think you move past it, and then it sort of rears its ugly head in weird ways. Just so many years of believing this shit.
Did you have any guilt when you had relations with guys?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, guilt is just baked in when you're Catholic. So yeah, I mean, I when you get to church every Sunday, or at least as I recall it, if I wasn't donning the altar boy robe, up on stage, but if you sit down in the pews, you pull down the kneelers, and you're supposed to kind of do a couple minutes of silent prayer before they start the main show. And I would say 99% of the time, junior high through high school, I was most likely praying for it to go away. at that point. Yeah.
Oh, wow. And did you develop any relationship type feelings with any of the guys you were sexually active with?
No. And that was, I mean, it really was kind of functional in that aspect. And I didn't, women is how I viewed what a real relationship was supposed to be, marriage and kids, and that's what that was supposed to be. And then this was this other thing that, again, I was sure was just going to run its course at some point. And even after I came out, nothing changed. I mean, other than just everybody knew. So now the only thing that had really changed my life was just the walking punchline of being the gay guy. And 9 times out of 10, I was going to laugh right along with a gay joke with anybody else. But, being the gay guy, kind of wore thin at times too. But the person, the guy, that really made me understand that this was something different. In fact, I never had an emotional or sexual relationship with, but I did fall head over heels for a guy that worked for the National Cheerleading Association with me.
Oh, wow.
And I got it. I mean, it was devastating, and I pined for this guy for quite a long period. It wasn't like, he was the captain of the football team or something. I mean, this guy, was a diehard Indigo Girls fan and worked for was a cheerleader instructor. I mean, like, I felt like I had sort of honed in on the right thing, and we were very close. Very first time I ever did LSD was with him.
Oh, wow.
But that kind of made me understand, like, okay, it's not going to be you, but I do now see that I can have an emotional relationship, a true kind of loving relationship with a man, and this is not just some kind of sexual fetish thing.
True awakening.
My true awakening.
So now everybody knew, but nothing really changed in my life. I mean, coming out as gay in Alabama is about as useful as coming out as a downhill skier. I mean, there wasn't a lot of opportunity. I was a non-practicing homosexual. But they loved my clever banter. So, 2003, my shiny new BFA in my hand, I am ready to go to New York. And I bought a plane ticket, and my dad was going to drive me to the airport. Now, the entire time I was in college, I had driven a PT Cruiser. How queer is that? And on the dashboard was my loyal traveling companion, this orange rubber lobster named Squeaky. He squeaked. So it's time to go to the airport, and my dad goes to pick up my suitcase to throw it in the back of his pickup, and it must have weighed 100 pounds. He's like, what the hell's in here? I'm like, no, it's all my music. I packed it with all of my CDs still in their jewel cases. Ironically, the very next day in New York, I would see somebody with an iPod for the very first time. So anyway, he throws this suitcase into the back of his truck, and it makes this, incriminating squeak, squeak. He's like, is that your goddamn lobster? I was like, Squeaky, come on, you're going to ruin this for everybody. So I get to New York, and I've got, I'm living in Harlem, and I've got a bag full of CDs and a rubber lobster. And a brand new laptop computer, and this was key because I could not wait to get to Manhattan and log on to gay.com. Now, because y'all, this was before Adam for Adam or Manhunt or Scruff or Squirt or Grinder and Bumper and Dumper and Scraper. I was one of 5 dudes in the chat room for the entire state of Alabama. Yeah, and if you think leaving your neighborhood sucks, try driving 5 hours to meet a dude in a trailer and then having to circle the block until his wife and kids go to church. I mean, the struggle is real. So here, I told you to move the truck.
Gay.com, the memories, the chat rooms. Oh my word. I can't even imagine being in a chat room with gays where only 5 people are around.
Give or take. And it's funny down there. I mean, even within Auburn, which is where I went to school, Auburn University, I mean, there was AGLA, which was the Auburn Gay and Lesbian Association. And I did go to one event with them, but it was, I guess I just wasn't ready for it. Yeah. I mean, it was very incestual and kind of cunty. Can I say cunty?
Yeah,
kind of bitchy.
Of course.
And I just meant in general, not necessarily on the podcast. I was like, is that okay to say? But it wasn't a welcoming vibe. And like I said, I may not have just been ready for a group of, but it felt like there was kind of two choices down there. There were super, super, super flamboyant Southern guys who I adore. Or these dudes that were trying to pull off this kind of frat boy drag.
Oh,
yeah, which was equally not fun. And it was the South. I was very insulated in the theater department.
Yeah.
So I really lived my whole life in there. But outside of that, it is frat boy and sorority girl territory. It is bowheads and ball caps.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then moving to New York City, like what a contrast having, so many guys to choose from. Did you have like your obligatory sort of like hoe period where you test out all the merchandise?
I did. Not when I first moved here, because again, when I moved to New York, I moved up here with like 8 of my straight friends from college. And I didn't realize how little I had branched out until everybody started getting married and moving back home. And I was like, oh, fuck, I got nobody here. In between my last relationship and Peter was sort of when I kind of did more of that kind of crawl in the streets, but I don't miss it.
So when you first moved here, now you moved with all your theater friends. Were you pursuing theater as your full-time job at that point?
Initially, I mean, I was pursuing drinking as my full-time. I mean, like I guess it's easy to look back at, when you first moved to the city and think, oh God, if I would have just realized, how much potential I had, at that age. I did enough background extra work to, that mama could see me in the back of, I had one more elevated background role on an episode of Law & Order SVU when I got acting directions from Ice Cube. He told me to act more dead because he could see me breathing. But and then I did an internship I did have some cool things. I did an internship with Signature Theater, during which I got to be a production assistant to Bill Irwin on a production he did. I was also there during the Paula Vogel season, which was very cool. She, coming from an academia background, because she was at the time, and I don't know if she still is, did the playwriting program at Brown University, but she was really big on all of the interns doing lunch with her once a week so we could ask her anything we wanted to about theater. And that was sort of an invaluable experience. And then I got sidetracked in jewelry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did you create or did you work in...
I owned. There's a big jewelry company out there called Andrew Hamilton Crawford. I'm the Andrew of Andrew Hamilton Crawford.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So my ex-boyfriend, his background was in jewelry, and he wanted to start a jewelry company. It sounded fun that day, and the idea was that this was going to be this money-making machine, and then I'll be able to get back into performance. And I just don't think. Nobody knows before they start their first company just the amount of work that it's going to be.
Oh, yeah.
So I had the jewelry company. We had a showroom in Dallas, a showroom in Atlanta, a showroom in New York. Then we had our retail store in Hell's Kitchen for 8 years. And then we split the company. So he moved the store to Savannah. And then I took a job in corporate retail. And it was actually right at a year and a half ago that I made the conscious decision that I was going to dive back into some sort of performance. And I did I would sell this door to door, but I did the full, like, dove in balls deep into The Artist Way.
Oh, right.
The Julie Cameron book. It was absolutely life-changing for me. And when I started it, I was still thinking as a writer. I mean, I've got a couple, I've got a screenplay I've been working on but anyway, a couple writing projects that I was working on and really trying to get myself focused and back into the mindset of doing art. And it was really through during the morning pages and all of the exercises that she has you do that I even was able to admit that I wanted to get back into some type of performance. And
so cool.
Yeah, and like stand-up comedy kind of made sense because it could still work around my schedule. It was at night, and it took hold quicker than I realized it would.
And you are hilarious.
Oh, well, thank you.
So you've been doing stand-up for a year and a half now?
I mean, really hardcore.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had a couple false starts over the years. But what's interesting, when I first moved to the city, my best friend, who's straight, exploded into the comedy scene here. And I was, again, looking back at like ways, I was always around it. I mean, I was basically living the life without getting on stage. I mean, because I was out every night with the comics and drinking, and I knew a lot of the folks in the scene, the young guys. So I never had that young comic, going to all the open mics experience and having that, I sort of lived it through him. And he flew, like there was, the New Yorker did an article on stand-up comedy. He was picked as the up-and-comer. But that would have been 2003. And I can think of one stand-up comic, or one gay stand-up comic at the time, and I won't name him by name, but it was like going to the zoo to watch a gay guy. He would get up on stage and call himself a faggot, and I just don't think it would have been much more difficult, at that point to get. I mean, because the first joke I ever wrote was a Grindr joke. I have done sort of gay damn it jokes since I started for very straight audiences, and when we decided, when the booker Rich at Broadway Comedy Club came to me and he had this idea to do this LGBTQ competition. If you would have asked me, is there already an LGBTQ competition out there? I would have said, well, of course there is. And I was shocked at how many, queer comics there are, and it's changing so quickly, where
Absolutely.
Yeah, it used to be we have to find the one gay or the one black comic, and then we have to find the one woman comic. It's the clubs really want queer comics on their lineup, and I love being able to help people get into the scene.
Yeah, when I started in 2002, to get past at a club, they'd be like, "Nah, I got my gay guy." Yeah, sure. That's how it was back in the day, and that's what I was in the alt scene for so long, and that's where I sort of hid in East Village for the most part.
Poppy and
all those guys like Poppy, Michael Brill, Danny Cohen, Danny Leary, all those guys. And then I think it's completely changed, and it seems so much more welcoming now. Well,
look, I mean, I'm sure just this month. I mean, we're in July. Or June, excuse me. It's like every single club has a quote unquote pride show.
Yeah, that didn't used to happen.
Yeah.
Thanks, clubs.
So I'm living in New York and living my fabulous gay.com life, and years go by, and it just never seems like the right time to bother telling. I didn't care if they knew. I just didn't want to have some sort of sappy after school, tonight on a very special Queer as Folk moment. And until finally, and I mean, the Christmases went by, the Thanksgivings went by, my brother knew, his wife knew, after a few years, their kids knew. And finally, I go home this one trip, I met a guy, and we were moving in together, and I guess it was time to actually, bring up more than my CDs and my lobster. I needed the important things like my life-size framed Dolly Parton portrait. And it's the end of the weekend, the PT Cruiser's all packed up, squeakies on the dashboard, and both my parents are standing in the kitchen. And I go in there and I'm like, all right, I'm going to hit the road. And my mom is chopping cantaloupe. I'll never forget it because she turns to me and I swear to God, she's aiming the knife right at me. And she said, are you and this guy roommates or are you two moving in together?
No.
The passive-aggressive Olympics have come to the end. Mom is ready to go pro. I said, both, I guess. And she said, were you going to bother telling us? And I was like, and she turns back around and she's back to chopping this cantaloupe, which is starting to look like chutney. And I look at my dad and he said, don't forget to check the oil in that car before you take off. And that was it. I mean, that was like... And I don't even know what the message is. I mean, all I can say is just fucking live your life. Eventually everybody else will get on board. And that is it. My name is Shawn Tessier, the Alabama Tessier. Thank you very much.
Okay, so your parents had a really, like, American Anglo-Saxon way of dealing with your coming out. Did you guys ever, to this day, have a conversation about you being gay?
We don't talk about anything. But, gosh, that is a complicated question. I mean, they know and very much like my boyfriend.
He's great.
In fact, yeah, he is great. In fact, I took Peter home for my 20th high school reunion.
Oh, wow.
Last year, and that was fine. I mean, almost disappointingly fine. I mean, it was just like, as sort of, kind of gay white guys at this point, I feel like we're just so yesterday's news.
Oh,
anyway.
yeah, totally.
I mean, we're just one step, below the rung on the patriarchy, but... it was almost a non-event to walk in. I mean, again, with the age of Facebook and everything, it really changes the whole dynamic of a reunion because you've already seen, how fat everybody is and who their kids are.
Exactly.
And there's no surprises, so it was fine.
Yeah, reunion. But was everyone very welcoming to Peter?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's so great.
Yeah, it was a success all the way around.
Well, that's incredible. And so, I mean, do you still go to your parents' house for holidays and Peter comes along?
Not often. Again, with corporate retail, I haven't been home for Christmas in 18 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, or even before corporate retail, when I owned my store. I was just... so I don't get home often. And they don't travel to New York often. But it's fine.
It's fine. Yeah. Exactly. Oh my God. Well, thank you so much for doing this podcast. This is so great. And so we went into categories I didn't expect we were going to go into, went a little deeper than I thought we were going to go, and I really loved it.
And y'all, if you get an opportunity, come see this show live because he gets really, really funny comics, and it's just emotionally all over the place. And it's a great show. I appreciate you doing it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, the next one is July 15th at Stonewall at 7 p.m. Go to closetcasesshow.com to check out the lineup. And guys, remember, it may have been dramatic then, but isn't it hilarious now? Thank you guys for listening. Thank you again, Drew. You've been awesome. Woohoo!